Here's the counterintuitive thing about AI benchmarks. The moment a model scores well on one, that benchmark stops being useful. It's a treadmill. And yet OpenAI just built a new one, specifically for genomics and biology, which means they believe we're still at the beginning of something, not the end. The announcement is called GeneBench-Pro. On the surface, it looks like a standard research release, a new evaluation framework for testing how well AI models handle complex real-world biology and genomics tasks. Here's what the headlines missed. The existence of this benchmark is itself the signal. When a frontier lab invests in building evaluation infrastructure for a specific domain, it's not charity. It's a map of where they think capability is about to break open. Let's actually look at this. For years, AI performance in science has been measured against datasets that were never designed for it. Static question banks, curated exam problems, sometimes just repurposed grad school homework. These benchmarks test recall. GeneBench-Pro is testing something different. The datasets powering GeneBench-Pro are pulled from real experimental contexts, genome sequencing outputs, protein interaction problems, and multi-step research tasks that require chaining inferences across noisy, incomplete biological data. That last part is crucial. In actual biology research, data is almost never clean. A model that aces a curated dataset can completely fall apart when confronted with the kind of ambiguous, high-dimensional outputs that come off a real sequencer. GeneBench-Pro is explicitly trying to close that gap. Now here's where the structural story gets interesting. Benchmarks don't just measure capability, they shape it. Once this standard exists publicly, every major lab has an incentive to optimize against it. That changes what gets built and how researchers inside those labs prioritize their work. The genomic space has been waiting for exactly this kind of forcing function. Right now, biotech teams evaluating whether to trust an AI tool with research decisions have no neutral ground to stand on. Every vendor makes their own claims. GeneBench-Pro gives buyers a shared language. Think about what that means for procurement cycles at pharma and research institutions. A benchmark backed by OpenAI carries implicit authority. It doesn't have to be perfect to reshape how those conversations happen. It just has to become the default reference point. There's also a competitive dimension that isn't being talked about enough. Google DeepMind has AlphaFold. They've staked enormous credibility on structural biology. A strong genomics benchmark from OpenAI is a territorial move. It's claiming a different slice of the scientific AI landscape. And territory in AI increasingly means training data pipelines, research partnerships, and the kind of institutional trust that takes years to build. Benchmarks are one of the fastest ways to establish credibility with scientific communities that are, by default, skeptical of commercial claims. Let's zoom out to the capability question itself. Why does genomics specifically demand its own benchmark? Because biological reasoning is compositional in a way that general reasoning benchmarks don't capture. Understanding a gene variant's effect requires integrating evolutionary context, protein function, regulatory networks, and probabilistic disease risk simultaneously. Current frontier models handle pieces of this reasonably well. They struggle with the integration. That's not a hardware problem or a parameter count problem. It's an architecture and training data problem. A benchmark that surfaces exactly where the integration breaks down gives researchers a precise target. Here's what the headlines missed in terms of timing. We're at a moment where AI-assisted drug discovery is transitioning from pilot programs to production workflows. Companies like Recursion, InSilico, and Exscientia are making real pipeline bets on model performance. The cost of a miscalibrated benchmark at this stage is not academic, it's clinical. That raises the legitimacy question that any honest analysis has to sit with: who validates the benchmark? OpenAI building an evaluation framework for OpenAI models, even if third parties can run it, is a conflict of interest worth naming. The scientific community will scrutinize this. They should. The value of GeneBench-Pro will ultimately depend on whether independent research groups adopt it, stress test it, and publish disagreements with its design choices. If it stays inside the OpenAI ecosystem, it's marketing. If it escapes into the broader research conversation, it becomes infrastructure. For founders and operators in the life sciences or AI tooling space, the practical implication is straightforward. Get familiar with this benchmark before your customers do. If GeneBench-Pro gains traction, it will show up in RFPs, in investor due diligence, and in the questions research teams ask before signing enterprise contracts. What to watch next? Look for whether major research universities and independent biology labs start publishing GeneBench-Pro scores alongside their own evaluations. That's the adoption signal that matters most. Watch also for how Google DeepMind and Anthropic respond. Silence would be unusual. The deeper story here isn't about one benchmark. It's about who gets to define what competence means in scientific AI, and whether that definition gets set by labs, by researchers, or by the institutions that have to live with the decisions these models help make.